Yeah, like always, appreciate you guys coming and covering Penn State football. Appreciate it. Two players that I just would like to talk about briefly that I think are playing really good football, and I think they deserve to be a part of conversations nationally, is Jay Reed and Zane Durant. I think are playing really, really good right now in a lot of different ways and a lot of different reasons. Proud of those guys. Their development within our program, both on and off the field, has been impressive, and to see how they are in a lot of ways leading our defense right now, verbally as well as through their play. So really proud of those guys, and they're having very, very productive seasons. Just a quick recap on Wisconsin, opportunities for growth. We had not had a delay game penalty all year long, so that's something that we got to get cleaned up. That was disappointing, and then the fumbled snap. Those two things are uncharacteristic for us, so we got to get those things cleaned up. And then defensively, just some substitution things. That play, we had 12 guys on the field. We knew we had 12 guys on the field, but I had to burn a timeout earlier. And did not have a timeout available to impact that. We had a player go on the field and not communicate with the player to come off the field. So we got to get some of those things cleaned up, because that could have been obviously significant. When you talk about Ohio State, what they've been doing and what they've done, and Ryan Day and his career there, and the program in general, obviously a ton of respect of what they've been able to do for a long period of time under a number of different coaches, and then obviously how they're playing again this year. You look at them statistically, they're playing really good football pretty much across the board. Offensively, Chip Kelly there, I think Chip kind of has a reputation of a guy with a spread background and throwing the ball around, and I get that. But if you really study Chip, he's always had a strong running game, and you see that this year. It's a big part of what they're doing, 11 personnel and 12 personnel. The quarterback, Will Howard, who transferred from Kansas State, is a big guy and playing really good football for him. Touchdown to interception ratio, QBR, all those things, doing some really good things. Obviously, a young man from Pennsylvania, so he'll have a bunch of support here from his family and friends. Travion Henderson is explosive, one of the most explosive running backs in the country, who we recruited out of high school and are very, very familiar. Quinshon Judkins, who we're also familiar with as well. Two really good running backs, and then obviously there's a bunch of receivers you could talk about. The guy that's getting a lot of buzz right now is Jeremiah Smith, the freshman. But there's a number of receivers that we could be talking about. Defensively, Jim Knowles, who's also a PA guy, is doing a really good job with their defense, and has now for the last couple of years. Multiple scheme defense. Really, probably the thing that gets talked about the most is their three safeties that they play with, how they do it. He's been doing that in some form all the way back to his time at Oklahoma State, but is really doing a nice job. Their safety, Caleb Downs, who they got out of the transfer portal, is playing very well. Cornerback Denzel Burke, number 10. And then obviously two defensive ends that are challenging in Jack Sawyer, as well as Tui Mau Lowau. I hope I said that right. I mean that with all due respect. But both of those defensive ends are playing extremely well, and got a ton of respect for what they do and how they do it. And then on special teams, we think they do it by committee. Which some programs do that. Their kickoff coverage team has been really impressive. They've only allowed 5 returns this year. Lorenzo Stiles really stands out on that unit. And then when you talk about their punt coverage team, that's another thing that kind of stood out to us. They've only had 3 returns on the year, doing a really good job. Their punter's doing a really good job with punt location, hang time, things like that. So obviously we all know this is going to be a challenge. We're going to need a tremendous environment in that stadium on Saturday. Home field advantage is going to be something that's going to be very, very important for us. So we need this place rocking. No matter what time the game is, we need a great environment, and we need everybody in the stadium early. We need that place rocking. We need everybody standing and screaming on third down and critical downs and possessions. And this is going to be an all hands on deck game. So appreciate everybody's support and open up the questions.
Let's go to Rich Garcella, followed by Mike Gross.
Good afternoon, James. How are you today?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. If Drew's injury is not a long-term, what do you need to see from him this week before you make a decision?
I lost you there. Could you say that again, Rich? After you said Drew's injury, I lost you there.
Sure. If Drew's injury is not a long-term one, what do you need to see from him this week before you make a decision?
Yeah, I think he's played enough football for us that timeline will go all the way up to the game, really. I do think from a practice perspective, we're going to have to, no matter where we're at on Tuesday, we're going to have to get both of those guys reps, Tuesday and Wednesday. But it's too early to tell at this point. But he's played enough football that I think that decision will go all the way up to game time. But the reality is we're going to have both guys ready, and you could even make the argument all three guys ready, which is challenging to do in a game week, is to try to get all those guys ready. So have had some conversations with Danny and Andy about that already. We'll continue to have conversations about it, but I do think Drew has played enough football that it'll go all the way up to game time until we make that decision. Yes, sir.
Let's go to Mike Gross, followed by Mark Wogenrich.
Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Mike. How are you, man?
Good thing. Ohio State over the last couple of years seems to have made the transition, at least that's the perception, to being a more physical team and being more, maybe a little more run game oriented, maybe a little better defensively. Do you recognize that as a real thing? And if so, how have they sort of done that?
I guess I don't know if that's talk out there, media. I don't know. So I'm unaware of that conversation. All I can talk about is what I see on film, and obviously the last 2 years they've played really good defense. Really, the last number of years they've played really good defense. But I think since Coach Knowles has been there, he's taken them to a whole nother level. And then offensively this year, like I mentioned in my opening statement, when you talk about Chip, there's a commitment to running the ball. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I think that's always been the case if you look back at Chip over his history. And I think Chip has the experience and the ability to play to the strengths of his team, and I think he is clearly doing that right now. Not sure what's going on. Sorry, guys. But, Mike, I hope that answers your question. I just base it off of film. I'm not really sure kind of what the Ohio State fan base and media is talking about. I'm unaware of that.
Do you want to give this a try?
Huh?
Do you want to give this a try, or is that too distracting?
I'm okay as long as you guys are okay.
You guys good? Okay. Let's go to Mark Wogenrich, followed by Frank Bodani.
I set it off so I could try to get out of here.
Mark?
Hey, James, you got me?
Hey, Mark. How are you, buddy?
Good, thanks. The game now this week has event status. It's a recruiting and NIL fundraising opportunity. So what other demands of your time off the field are you going to allow or not allow this week?
Yeah, nothing changes for us. We have our same process with the players in terms of how we operate, with those topics in season, and our guys do a good job with that. I think that's probably, it's funny because I just talked about that this morning in the staff meeting. I think that's a big part of my job, right, is we have some media policies, kind of just how we govern ourselves and how we go about our business, which is magnified on weeks like this when everybody reaches out and wants to do interviews with specific players. And by saying, hey, players are only going to do 2 interviews max per week helps with that, helps manage that. And then it's kind of the same with the staff. You know, we're not a Bill Belichick level of program in terms of it's a one voice deal. We don't go to that extreme, but we're also just not wide open either. So trying to keep this thing as consistent and as structured as possible, so that we can stick to our normal routine. But all the other things, you know, the stadium, you know, different things that are going on, we don't deal with that. That's where Vinny and Pat and the administration handle all those things. For me, I'm worried about the Lash football building and the practice facility and then Beaver Stadium, the playing surface in the locker room, and all those other things outside of that. We try not to spend any, if not very little, time on it.
Let's go to Frank Bodani, followed by Johnny McGonigal.
Hey, good afternoon, James. How are you?
Hey, Frank, how are you?
Real good, thanks.
Frank, you got great hair, by the way.
Where do I rank compared to Manny Diaz in that?
No, well, Manny's kind of a whole nother level, right? Manny's,
Right,
you know. Is it gel or mousse?
A little gel.
Nice.
Little gel.
Nice. You got great hair.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Now I'm completely off kilter here, but here goes anyway. Bo Prevula,
Yes, sir.
the most impressive thing about his performance Saturday, but then also, how do you feel from your perspective, the offense? How much different is it when he's leading it as opposed to Drew? And is that more advantage or more challenge when you have that situation?
Well, a couple things, if I'm understanding your question correctly. I think as a defense, it's difficult because I think when you're preparing for Drew, and Bo will have his few plays that we sprinkle in there per quarter. That's difficult, but when the kind of the game plan flips, right, and Bo's in there, it changes it dramatically, I think, for the defense. And that is difficult. Most people aren't built like that, right? Your quarterbacks are all similar type guys, and ours are very different in a lot of ways. I don't think we're in a situation where the offense totally changes. But what's nice about us, and it was a big reason in bringing Andy here, is we do enough things and we have enough diversity within our playbook that we are able to focus on the strengths of the players that are in there. And that's all I really did on Saturday, was just remind Andy of that, because this was a little bit of a problem in the past in practice and in games, that you really should strategically call the game differently now with Bo in the game, and just reminding Andy of that. Let's call this game playing to Bo's strengths. So obviously the threat of the quarterback run impacts the defense. The spike of more quarterback possible runs and scrambles affects the defense. And then obviously the strength in the passing games, Bo still can do all those things as well. So it's just, it's another kind of level of concern that I think it creates for the defense of things that they have to deal with. So I think the other thing I think that's really important that probably has not gotten talked about a whole lot is just the way Bo has gone about his business since he's arrived on this campus. He's got everybody's respect and confidence and trust, so that when he went in the game, I think there was a lot of confidence from our team that, we are blessed and fortunate to have a guy like Bo here in that role.
Let's go to Johnny McGonigal, followed by
Frank, did I answer all your questions?
Let's go to Johnny McGonigal, followed by Neil Riddell.
Sorry. How you doing?
Hey, Johnny.
Hey, you mentioned with Drew, playing enough football that you can stretch it out to go all the way to game time in terms of making a decision. Do you feel like Deny is in the same boat?
Yes.
And then how would you assess the play of Smith and Amin when they had to play a little bit more reps against Wisconsin?
Yeah, I was really pleased with those guys. You guys heard me talk about Smith a lot, in preseason and right in the beginning of the season. I'm a big fan of his growth and development since he's arrived on campus. His ability as a football player. I think one of the things you're seeing now is the plan was that we were going to play Smith at D tackle. And as the D tackle depth kind of grew and some guys came on, like we didn't know what we were going to get out of Alonzo after coming off an injury. And as he's played well, and then we lost some depth at defensive end with some injuries and things like that, then we said, hey, we want you to stay at defensive end full time. But at that point, he'd gotten up to 285. So now his weight is coming down. He's about 275 right now. He's quicker, more explosive. So I thought he played very well. I thought Amin played very well. Amin's one of the most physical guys that we have on our team. You guys have heard me tell stories about our tight ends kind of looking across on split zone to see who's over there, and they say Amin, and they're like, you start buttoning up their helmets, right? I'm really proud of those two guys. Two guys came from the same high school program, that does a phenomenal job. Augie, the head coach there, does a phenomenal job. And I felt very confident coming into this season that both Smith and Amin were going to have big years, and I still believe that. I think both of those guys are going to play football for a long time. Deny will have the ability to play in this game. He's played a ton of football. He's super mature. He's very intelligent. He's thoughtful. He's hardworking. He's been in the training room the last 2 days. Every time I've gone down there, he's down there. So same thing. We'll go right up to game time to see kind of where we're at with things. If he's able to go, he'll go. But if not, we have a ton of confidence in those other guys as well. And then I think you guys saw we played Max as well, so we'll be prepared to play Max this week. He's still under the threshold of redshirting, which we'd like to try to do if we can. But if it comes down to winning, we're gonna do what we got to do to win the game, and Max is on board with that as well. So too early to tell at this point. But yeah, those are veteran guys that have played enough football and are intelligent guys that we feel like they'll be able to go in and get the job done.
Let's go to Neil Riddell, followed by Dennis Dodd.
Hey, James.
Hey, Neil.
As you look at this series, what can you learn from the past 10 years of, is there some common threads? Have you guys played as loose against them as maybe the rest of your schedule? And, how much would it help to clear this hurdle?
They're a really good football team. They're as talented of a roster as anybody in the country, and they're that way every single year. They are as well this year. We have to play really well. We have to play really clean. We're going to need a great environment. It's a challenge, and I think our guys are ready for the challenge. We're going to have a really good week of practice, but we don't need to change anything. We don't need to do anything more than what we've done each week, which is just trying to get better and refine our process. But yeah, that's the plan is be prepared for a really good team. It's one of the most talented teams in the country in our year in and year out. And also, in terms of wins and losses, one of the most productive teams in the country. So we're fortunate to play them. We're excited about the opportunity, and That's what we're focused on, is the Ohio State team from this year and the Penn State team for this year, and what we have to do to find a way to get a win. And what I'm excited about is this team has showed all of our fans, all of our lettermen, our alumni, the students, everybody, that they're going to find ways to get the job done. And we're going to have to do that again this week against a really good team who's extremely talented.
Two more from Zoom. Dennis Dodd, followed by Adam Rittenberg.
Hey, James.
Hey, Dennis.
Why? Hi. You've been asked this before, but why was Andy Nicky so attractive? What was the buzz in the industry about him? And I haven't seen this. Was there a name for the play against USC where Bo threw to Drew and then back to Ty on that trick play? Does that have a name? Is that in the playbook since the beginning of the season?
Yeah, so a couple things. Andy has been kind of on my radar for a while. Actually interviewed him for our tight ends job when I hired Ty Howell. We played Buffalo when him and Lance were at Buffalo and had done a good job. And then Lance and Andy came and visited a couple times. I got a ton of respect for Lance and what he's been able to do. And then, Andy's been calling plays for a long time. I think he's been doing it for 19 years, and there's value in that type of experience. But probably the thing, Dennis, to answer your question specifically was, we did some really good things the last couple of years, but where we were lacking last year is in explosive plays. So then we kind of started to look at who are the coordinators and who are the teams that are producing explosive plays, and not just because their genetics are better. Like, where are the explosive plays coming from? How are they being created? And are they happening on a consistent basis? And also, are they doing it against their biggest competition? So when you kind of looked at those types of things, the list narrowed down pretty quickly. And then the fact that we had already had a relationship and been talking for a while, that helped. And then obviously I know how Lance felt about him, and I have so much respect for Lance. And then I will say this too. I got to give Kansas and Lance, and I got to give their athletic director a ton of credit because it wasn't easy hiring him. He's been with Lance for a long time. You don't make that move unless you feel good about it. And I think Kansas is committed to winning in football at a level that we probably haven't seen for a long time. And that's a credit to their head coach and their athletic director as well, because it wasn't easy to hire him. In terms of the play call, I am used to wordy play calls because if you come from a West Coast offensive system, they're very wordy. They tell everybody what to do. I think a little bit that comes back to Coach Walsh, and also, well, not a little bit to Coach Walsh, but all of it to Coach Walsh. But a little bit has to do with the NFL. And when you're trading for players, and a lot of people are running the same system, you can trade for a guy and plug him in pretty quickly because you're pretty much telling everybody what to do. And I would say Andy's like that, not really from a West Coast offense, but our stuff is wordy. I'm talking our play calls could be anywhere between 12 and 16 words. So I'm not going to get into all that, and I don't have it all written out. And to be honest with you, I don't know if anybody on our team could do that because we don't memorize calls. A lot of times you signal the call from the sideline or the wristband, and the quarterback would memorize the call, then step into the huddle, make eye contact with everybody, make the call. But our stuff is too wordy for that. I think we've all seen the clip with Gruden, like getting frustrated on social media with the play call, and he's acting like it's so easy. I forget who the quarterback was. Yeah, it was Sims. And Sims is struggling with it, and Gruden is acting like, come on, this is easy, and it's like literally 12 to 15 words. So, that would be interesting for you, but it would seem like word salad, to be honest with you.
Our last question from Zoom is Adam Rittenberg.
Adam?
He's not on anymore? Perfect.
Lost.
We'll go over here to Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, I'm following these celebrities, so I'm a little nervous. Hey, you talked about how wordy the play calling and whatnot could be. How has Grunk come along since he's gotten here and absorbing all of those type of things? And how might his week change this week compared to usual?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Grunk, and I think there's a ton of excitement in our program. Talk to our defensive coaches and talk to our defensive players about the respect that they have for Grunk. As you guys know, we had a relationship with Brad Mendler, and I think he's done a phenomenal job. There's a lot of excitement in our program about Grunk. He's really kind of a nice blend between Drew and Bo in some ways, and he makes some throws that are really impressive. So, again, there's only so much time to go around, but I think I think Danny's doing a really good job, and I think Grunk is doing a really good job, just like you heard the conversations about with Bo, that those guys are preparing as if they're the starter, and that's one of those things that's easier said than done. But Grunk's improvement has been dramatic, and I think he's got a special future. We are fortunate to have those guys here, but I think, watching what happened on Saturday, I think that doubles down and reinforces to those guys, hey, I better have my stuff together. But there's only so many reps to go around. So if Drew is able to practice and we're going to get reps to Bo, it's hard to now also get reps to the third guy, because if you're not careful, you spend all this time getting all of them ready and you get none of them ready, right? So that's the challenge.
Let's go to John.
Hey, James.
So it probably won't change a whole lot, Mark, is what I'm saying based on the information I have right now. Sorry.
You're good. Hey, James.
You talked about the sliding scale of experience with Drew and Deny. Where's Anthony Donko on that scale when it comes to Saturday, and how has Nolan Rucci handled taking over for him on several occasions this year?
Yeah, so obviously I don't think Anthony's in the same category of those guys in terms of just the number of games he's played in. I mean, he's really a first-year starter this year. Both Deny and Drew are multiple-year starters now, so it's a little bit different. We've already been playing Rucci a bunch anyway, but we're going to need both of those guys. So, living in the training room. And I think there's also really, for all of our players, there's that maturation process that I think a lot of times comes from the players of figuring out what can you play with and should you play with and what can't you. And guys have to figure that out. That's part of maturity and growth as a football player. Obviously, ultimately, the medical people will step in there when a guy can't play. But I'm talking about the guys that can play that have to kind of figure out how to play with those bumps and bruises and things like that. So that's where that leadership is really important. I think Donka is working through that right now. This week will be really important. He's a great kid. He's a smart kid. He was in the training room when I left as well, him and Rucci. So we expect to play both of those guys, but it's too early to say.
In the middle, Shane.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, Shane.
You dealt with the injury bug all season, and you've had to weather plenty of storms with that. How much confidence do you get from the adversity your team's been able to overcome, and how much of that is, would you say, talent versus just being able to adjust on the fly?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of that, right? I think we kind of had the early injury bug, and then kind of things leveled off again, and then you play really good teams and it's physical. Those things are going to happen. So I think we've been tested. I think we've proven that we can kind of overcome some of those things, and I think we have proven that we have some pretty good depth. But obviously, when you're playing one of the better teams and one of the more talented teams in the country, obviously you want to be as healthy as you possibly can. So I'm appreciative of how the guys are handled. I'm appreciative of our trainers and doctors. I'm also appreciative of Kale. Kale reached out Last night I got a text message from him and some of the things that they do. They had some injuries last year that they were dealing with as well, so I had some ideas there, and that's what's cool about this Penn State and this brotherhood that we have. When I say brotherhood, I'm talking about the coaches, both male and female, and all the sports supporting each other and having each other's backs, and the same thing with the players and the lettermen and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. No different than players coming back and being on the sideline and being around us. It's a special thing. So we'll take every resource we got, vitamins, sleep, saltwater tanks, whatever the technology is, whatever it is, we're going to do everything in our power to have our guys ready to play and play well. And there's a physical component to that. There's a mental component to that. There's an emotional component to that. There's a maturity and experience component to all those things too.
In the back, Max.
Hey, James.
Hey, Max.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. How much, if at all, do you think that a division-free Big Ten and a 12-team playoff has changed the big picture perception of this game?
I'm not sure. I think it's been impactful. I was told for a long time it wasn't, that it all levels out in the end. But I think we all know that that's not necessarily the case. So yeah, I think it probably changes some things. I don't think there's any doubt. I think it probably changes some programs in the East maybe than it does change some programs in the West. I think some programs in the East are probably happy about the changes. Some programs in the West probably aren't happy about some of the changes. But I do think the expanded playoffs is a good thing for college football. I think the going away from the divisions in the Big Ten, I think is good for the Big Ten. I think one of the things that's interesting, right? Whether it's questions like this or whether it's when I'm working with the AFCA, you ask people to vote or make decisions that are in the best interest of college football, not in the best interest of Penn State. So I think sometimes when you guys ask me these questions, I'm answering what's good for college football, not specific to Penn State. But I do think those two things have dramatically changed our game, and I think there's a lot of things that probably are still coming. Do we stay at 12 teams in the playoffs? I don't know. I think it probably grows. But it doesn't matter what the number is, somebody's going to complain, right? I think I've said that to you guys before. There's 64 teams in basketball? Is it 64? 68. And 69, 70, and 71 are complaining, right? Like, kind of always the case. So I think at the end of the day, we just got to find what the sweet spot is for the sport, what the sweet spot is for the universities, what the sweet spot is for the model in general. That takes everybody's best interest, the student athletes, the universities, the athletic departments, the other sports, all those things. But I do think they're good changes because I just think it creates more opportunities and more people to be involved year in and year out. So it's not the same 3 to 5 teams every year.